Okay, so next part is UX research. And I may be biased, but I think UX research is awesome. UX design can't live without UX research. I think it goes both directions, but it truly cannot live without UX research because everything that you design is driven by the research that you generate. So generative research is one of the things that we really focus on. That's when you're starting a project. You're generating research, you're interviewing people, you're observing them in their spaces, you're figuring out exactly what your market is and what your users do, and you're really trying to understand them so that you build something from the beginning that matches exactly what you're trying to get. Evaluative research is a little bit different. This can be used at pretty much any time during your project. Whether, like you guys play video games and things get released in beta and you get to play, you sign up to play the beta version. That's an example of them trying to figure out what's good and what's wrong, and then they go back after they get some feedback from you and they see where the bugs are, and they reboot their system, they add things to it, and they make it better before they release it out to the general public into the wild. So evaluative research is really important, especially, it's not necessarily even before you release something, even after you release something. So say you have like an airlines app and you release it to the wild, and it does great, but like maybe in a couple of months you want to see how it's doing in comparison to other airlines apps, or how it's just doing in general, and whether or not you need to improve anything, make any changes to it. So evaluative research is really important. The data that you get through UX research is qualitative and quantitative, and I don't think that one is more powerful than the other. Some people will argue that quantitative data is better because you can't really argue with numbers, but you also can't argue with what people do or what they say, which is two completely different things. A lot of people will say something, and then you observe them in their environment and they do something completely differently. So that's why it's important to understand your methods and understand exactly what kinds of goals you're trying to achieve, and use those things to your advantage to get the exact information that you want. And user research. So just understanding your users, working with them throughout the entire process. This is especially helpful this is helpful for every kind of product that you make, but especially with accessibility too, because if you're designing something for somebody who's deaf, or not deaf, maybe somebody who can't use their physical body to access the computer screen, and you design something for them based off of your own assumptions, it's wrong. It's going to come out wrong. You have to include all kinds of people throughout your process. It's really important. Any questions about UX research?
Do you have any introductory tool recommendations for collecting this data?
So it depends on what kind of data you want, and that's why UX can get really complicated. Like we could take a whole year-long course on just UX research, because there's so much involved, and can become very broad, qualitative things, to very discrete statistics that change. So it depends on what kind of data you're trying to get, or exactly more so back to the UX thing about problem solving. It's what kind of problem are you trying to solve, and what kind of data can we use to reach that solution, or at least kind of inform the way that we would address the solution. So the answer is it's complicated. But do you use R? Have you used R before?
The programming?
Yeah.
I don't use it personally, but
R is a lot of UX researchers use R, but again, what do you use R for? What kinds of things are you trying to get? A good example, I'll give you an example of qualitative data and quantitative data. So qualitative data being interviewing people, or do you ever go online, you're at online shopping, it's hey, do you want to fill out this survey? And you're no, not really. Yeah. I fill out the surveys because I know that they're being used by UX people. I never used to before, but now I do. I used to do it only before to get discounts, and I stopped getting discounts. I'm not doing this anymore. So, but now I do it again.
It also sounds like the context of entrepreneurship. It's the customer development phase put down to a multi-level science.
Yeah, totally. I think, I don't know a whole lot about marketing or entrepreneurship, but I know that a lot of things that exist in those spaces overlap, and they're very similar. So if you have a background in that, you can kind of really relate to it, but it is somewhat different, right? The goals are a little bit different, but they're also kind of the same. And I'm trying to think, like quantitative data. So if you have, say you launch a website and you want somebody to add something to their cart and go to the checkout, you can actually study this and you can time people, see how long it takes for them to complete the task. You can look at what steps they take, how many steps they do, and you can have them rate everything, and then you run that data and you kind of convert everything, and then you have actual solid numbers that will give, you can present to your stakeholders or your designers and be like, we need to change the text on this button because it has like a negative conversion rate.
It seems like one of the trends that resulted from that research was all websites now have checkout as guests because that's where they would lose.
Yeah, that is one. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's actually really impressive. That is, do you guys know that is one of like the biggest,
Critical.
It's so critical. That is one of the biggest things that changed conversion rates is having people check out as guests. Because I mean, if you have to sign in or you don't remember your login information, you have to create an account, it's the worst. And you're just like, screw this, I'm not doing this, I don't have time for it. You check out as a guest, it's so much faster, it's like 2 steps.
Was it like a double-digit increase in checkout?
Something like that, yeah, something ridiculous. So, whoa, good job. Anyone else have anything about UX research? I'm on time.
Generative data research again?
Generative research is like research that you use to, you're generating at the beginning of a process in order to inform what your designs are going to be like in the beginning. So like interviewing people, observing them, doing diary studies. So diary studies are kind of annoying. It's like having somebody basically have a diary on them and write out everything they do in a whole day, just so that you can see what their behavior is like. Versus evaluative, you're looking at something that already exists and you're going to use that information to either make changes or justify the reasons why you're keeping that specific design. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't expect everyone to understand this right away. It took me years to learn this. Okay, yeah.
The other thing that you were saying is, other factoids, is that Google has discovered that time to first render, if it's not, in the order of milliseconds, people will essentially leave. Like they'll
Oh yeah.
If your time to render is more than a second, then people will assume it's broken and down.
Yeah.
But there's a power declining curve that speed matters a lot. So.
Yeah, it really does.
When you start losing people like 6 seconds in, when the page starts it's like 20 seconds. It's
20 seconds.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, I see. So
no, sorry, that's like 20 like less than a second or something.
Yeah,
So
like
it's
it's on the order of hundreds of milliseconds.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah. It's like it's not there right away, then they leave.
So when they feel like they're going back to dial-up or something, well,
I mean, we've become accustomed to speeds that's like way faster than that. Like again, if people don't see something, which goes to your feedback thing, within like the first half a second, then they think it's broken. And then they wait a little bit, like up to 3 seconds, and if something hasn't happened, they really assume that it's broken and then they leave.
Yeah.
But people are used to sub 300 millisecond response time on even web applications now. It's extremely fast.
Yeah, but that's why UX people or designers too will develop or design, I keep saying design these interactions that show that the system is thinking, right? So like the little wheel, that's a thing to show system status, what's going on. Or like when you open an app, instead of it being a blank screen, there shows like a loading bar or something so you can see what's going on. That's another UX thing. It's an interaction design thing. So it's giving, right? It's somebody's interacting with the system and it's giving you feedback about what's going on. So the person isn't like, what is happening? This thing's broken. But in any case, if it takes too long, then they're gonna leave anyway. But yeah, so research is really important because again, understanding your users, knowing that about people is really important because that's how it'll change the way you build your website. Am I gonna use huge photo files so that my web page takes forever to load? Probably not because of something like that.
It seems like a lot of these margins can be success or fail for business too.
Yeah, totally.
40% of your users are gone, and then you're not going to survive.
Absolutely, for sure. It makes a big difference. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, cool. So design thinking is what we're moving on to next. And this is kind of a there's all these different terms for it, human-centered design, what is user-centered design, blah, 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 design thinking. Basically, it's just a fancy way of saying that your design focuses on people, which is what UX is too. So they naturally go hand in hand. Design thinking, it's an ideology, so it's a way of understanding how systems work around people, but it's also a process. And that's the process that I and probably most UX people use when designing products, and most big tech companies now also follow this process, or a variation of it. The good thing about this process is that it's iterative, so you're not stuck with exactly, like, it's not a linear thing. It can be iterated and you can go back and forth. It's like research, right? Like, there's a research portion where you test everything, but then you can do that pretty much at any point of your product development, and you should as much as possible if your budget allows for it. So this is basically what the process looks like. Again, this is from Nielsen Norman Group, but I can kind of go through it, what it looks like, and how UX would be incorporated into it. So first step is empathizing with your user. Again, getting to know who your user is and understanding them. Empathy is a really big word. It's kind of a buzzword in UX, but it's really important because you don't want to just like understand them. You want to really empathize with them. So conducting research and interviewing people, I feel like a broken record. You're interviewing people, you're observing them, and you're using that information to drive the next part, which is defining your problem, right? So if you don't define your problem and you don't do it explicitly and you don't have the design principles that you want to achieve by creating your product, then you're likely going to fail. You're not going to be set up for success. So figuring out what the problem is. These two, I would say, people want to rush through because it's a little bit more right-brained. It's not so, and you're not quite analytical in these phases. And for me, it took a long time to really understand that because I think I'm a little more analytical. And I thought, oh my God, we're doing all these exercises and there's Post-its everywhere. What the hell is going on? But it's really important, and once it clicks in your head, you're like, okay, I totally get it. It makes so much sense. And that's because when you do this, you really uncover things that don't sit on the surface. You kind of dive deep and really get to the root of things, and that's what makes the best products, is when you can kind of figure out exactly what needs to be met and how to do it in a way that's not on the surface. Because if it's so easy that it just exists on the surface, then everybody can have a solution to it and everyone would be making really great products. But I mean, again, Instagram, like, who knew that people needed Instagram? And they figured it out, and now it's like, what, $1.5 billion company, something like that, for sharing pictures and videos. It's ridiculous. I can't believe we live in this time. It's so weird. It's so weird. I remember when I was in college, this is like a tangent. When I was in college here, I had a flip phone. I had a Razor. I feel like most of you guys are probably too young. I had a Razor as a flip phone, and I could barely take pictures on it. And now we have like Instagram. Anyway, okay. So the next stage is ideating. So these are all empathizing. That's a UX thing, right? Defining something, this is a UX research thing. This is a UX design thing, defining things. Ideating, that's a UX design thing. So figuring out solutions to your problem, like, should I make an app? Should I make a website? What should it look like? How would what kinds of problems would it solve? What kind of features would it have? Figuring out, again, this is still not very analytical. It's really like a lot of lofty things that sometimes you're like, I can't take this anymore, but it's really important to sit and kind of just marinate in it and not rush to the prototype part, because everybody likes to do the prototype because it's pretty. You have like you guys know what wireframes are? It's like, everyone has a wireframe. You can see exactly what the app's gonna look like. It feels more tangible and realistic, so everyone likes that part. But it's important to get all of these things done before you move here, or else it's just not gonna work. So prototyping is a design thing. Once you have a prototype, and prototyping, again, takes a long time because you don't just have a prototype. You start with a prototype that doesn't have color, it doesn't have fonts, it doesn't have anything yet, it just has the way that somebody's gonna interact with it. And then you add the color and you add all the little interactions, and then you have to move on and test it with people. So this is a research thing. And testing is super important because it lets you know and validates whether or not you did your job. Yeah. And if you didn't, and like the thing is, it's not a bad thing if your product doesn't do well when you test it with people, because that's what you want, right? You want to see that it's not doing well and that you need to make improvements on it, because then you can take those things and add it to your app or remove it, and then you can implement it with people. So that's the last step. But there's, as we know, there's like no perfect product, right? Like you release something into the wild, like why do you think Google has so many UX designers on their team? It's because they're constantly updating everything that they have, all of their products. They're constantly testing it. They're constantly seeing, how can I improve it? How can I make sure that it meets what people expect of it? And also it meets the trends. Like if things are changing and there's new emerging trends, and they want to make sure that people understand exactly how to use something, or hey, this looks really old, so they update it. So again, this is like the same thing, but it's showing you that it's pretty much iterative. You're doing this at every phase. Just because you launch something doesn't mean that it's done. Usually, especially if you want a successful product, it's never done. You're constantly revamping it, and you're constantly making it new and addressing it so that your users are happy with the product and that it's still useful. Yeah.
And what's your best way of like testing the product? Just in person?
So it depends on what it is, and it depends at what point you're in the cycle. So let me see. I'll give you an example. So like the NASA thing that I was working on, we were building an augmented reality. So the NASA spacesuits that they use now are the same ones that they used from the 80s. It's the exact same model, and it needs to be updated. So they have it in their budget to redo a lot of the spacesuit and make it high tech and fancy. It's about time. So one of the ideas was building an AR interface into it so that astronauts can be more autonomous, and they can complete tasks better, easier, without having to rely on people. And then also having the ability to check out what their stats are. Right now, they have a chest plate on their spacesuit that has like their oxygen information, their blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. And they have a mirror on their actual suit, and that's how they check it. They have to look at this. So it's archaic. So they have to think of a way so that was like part of my project, was figuring out how we would display that information, and it's a lot of work. But anyway, one of the ways that we tested it was once we had the interface. Right now, what they do in space is you have like Houston reading the instructions to like, hey, get the screw. If they're changing something on the space station, for example, hey, get the screwdriver. Okay, I got the screwdriver. All right, now attach it to the thing and turn right 3 times. Okay, I just did that. Put the screwdriver back. That's how it goes, and it takes forever, which is totally understandable because you're in space, right? Like you screw up, you might die. So what we did was we tested, we tested some people. We weren't able to access astronauts, so we just had to test it on regular people. But people who were technical and understood the lingo and everything, how they would go about changing something, like changing a part, using the actual interface versus using a read-off system. And then you compare those results. So there's lots of things that you look at. So how long it takes for them to complete a task, how long it takes for them to complete the task, how many steps it takes, what kinds of problems they have with the interface, all kinds of data. You collect tons of data, and then you use that to drive what kinds of changes you make to the design. So that's one way that we test it. But again, there's eye tracking software. So if you have a web page and you want to see exactly what people look at first, you can see where they look, where they concentrate their information, or where their eyes move to, and how long they're looking at that. And there's like heat maps and all kinds of things. So it really depends on what your product is and what you're measuring and what you plan on doing with the data. So it's multifaceted. And that's like the hard part of UX. Like you can learn all of the methodologies, but unless you know exactly how to use those, it's totally useless. You might be spending like thousands of dollars and hours figuring out something just to figure out that that data is useless to you. Yeah, so that's the hard part of UX, but that's like something that comes with experience and reading a lot. Okay, we're almost at the end. So why does UX matter? Does anyone, it's not that It's not like a crazy question, but anyone? No?
Because we want to make things that are nice for people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I thought about some things too, and you can like look it up, like why is UX good? I mean, it makes things enjoyable to use, right? Like that, just like a human behavior thing. Nobody wants to use something that sucks or something that's hard to use. Seriously, nobody wants to. In terms of business, it builds customer loyalty. If something's easy to use or it's nice to use, people will keep coming back and using it. So that creates usefulness again, and here I am with like the utility and the usability thing. You have to make sure that it creates something that people want and they know how to use, and it enhances their life. And it's good for business. So I found this chart maybe like a month ago. This is on the IBM website. Basically what it was is it's looking at design-driven companies and how they outperform companies that aren't, or not out companies that aren't, but outperform all of the companies that exist in the S&P. So they found out, what they did is they basically looked at 75 different big companies and ran them against different criteria, and actually really strict criteria that basically said that they're design-driven. And there's only 15 actually, so like Apple's one of them, Starbucks is one of them, AT&T, Procter & Gamble, who else, Disney, other companies. So there's 15, and what they did is they graphed it alongside the S&P index and found that it was just design-driven companies just outperform them in general. So that's why I'm trying to convince you guys that it's a good idea, whether or not whether you're starting your own business or if you work for someone. It's really important to try to at least get people interested in UX and designing things for people and moving in that direction, because it will really make a difference in the business's success. And also, I selfishly just want people in Hawaii to like start embracing UX. It's really important. We're a little bit behind in comparison to a lot of other places, but there's still a lot of room for growth and making it something that's a little more understood in our community and utilized as well. So recap, really quick. UX is how an end user interacts with the company wholly. So not just the product itself, but from start to finish, how somebody learns about something and how they end up either not using the product anymore or hating the company or being a loyal customer. It covers design and research, which are both equally important. Design thinking is also a great thing. It's an ideology, it's also a process, and it works well and hand in hand with UX. And it's also something that, design thinking can be applied to everything, right? It's not only a UX principle, it's something that a lot of businesses use in order to make their companies more design-oriented and people-oriented. And then last thing is a thoughtful, useful, user-centered product that meets a need, creates success. And that's really, this phrase is like, really kind of encapsulates why UX exists. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I want to end with like a really corny quote that UX is people. The people who make UX, it's people, right? It's like I think most professions are somewhat people-driven, but it's not all driven by people. UX is 100% people. You're driven by people. UX exists because of people, and you're creating, the reason why it exists is because you're trying to create for people.